Okay, Google, type. Sometimes I pick up a phone and nothing bugs me about it. It's just an enjoyable experience. But I pause because as a tech YouTuber, that's not what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to give you both the pros and the cons. But over the course of reviewing these new Pixels these last few weeks, me alongside some of my tech reviewer friends have begun to question ourselves because we found very little to complain about these new Pixels. I'm not saying the new Pixel 6 and 6 Pro are perfect. They have their quirks too, but I'm thrilled to report that I think I might have just found my favorite Android smartphone of the year. Hi, I'm Michael Josh, your gadget matchmaker, helping you find the right device to match your needs. This is our Pixel 6 and 6 Pro review. What you just saw was a demonstration of Google's new voice recognition feature. It's not necessarily new. We've seen many iterations of it before on older Pixel phones. But this year, voice recognition has gotten so much better. For one, I did all of that while the phone was offline. Also notice that when I sped up, the transcription still came out 100% accurate. The only thing that it did wrong was it didn't capitalize the word Pixel. All of this is thanks to Google's new Tensor Chip, a new custom-built processor that's at the heart of the new Pixel 6 and 6 Pro. It's what defines this phone and sets it apart from its competitors. The Pixel 6 and 6 Pro are the phones that we've been wanting Google to build, and there's a lot of exciting stuff to talk about this year. But if I were to sum it up in a few bullet points, I'd say 1, it starts at a more affordable price tag that makes it hard to beat. $599 versus $699, $729, and $799. 2, it looks and feels like a flagship phone with an iconic new look and a more premium feel. And 3, that it's powered by Google's own custom processor. We'll dive into all 3 points in this video, but first I wanted to start with Tensor. Let me give you some background. Most Android phones, at least the top of the line ones, are powered by whatever's the best from Qualcomm each year. This year, it's Snapdragon 888. In contrast, Apple designs its own chips for the iPhones. And by designing both software and hardware, they are able to optimize so well, so much so that iPhones are both powerful and power efficient. With Tensor, Google is able to do the same thing this year, optimize, at least in terms of what they consider their priorities. Pixel exclusive features related to Google Assistant and camera performance. Don't worry, we'll dive into both in a bit, but first I wanted to address an obvious concern. Is the phone as fast and powerful as a phone running Snapdragon 888, like the Galaxy S21 Ultra? If benchmarks are to be believed, the answer is no. But in the 2 weeks that I've used the phone, I didn't encounter any noticeable slowdowns to complain about. The games I played, the tasks I completed, all of them felt breezy on the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro. Okay, back to some software features that are made great by Tensor. Earlier, I demoed their voice recognition feature, but that's really just the tip of the iceberg. While it seems simple, there's a lot that goes into it to make it work well, like being able to understand syntax and context, different accents. Google even says that they should be able to understand when you're talking with your mouth full. It also knows how to tune out background noise. See here, I tried dictation on a subway. Listen to that noise. Heart emoji. And the Pixel was able to handle the task just fine. It's so good that now you can just dictate everything. And while you're recording, you can even go back with a cursor and fix errors without interfering with your dictation. It can also learn custom spelling. So for example, at first, it didn't know how to spell chai, but as soon as I went back and corrected it, the next time I tried, it knew that chai was spelled with a C-H-A-Y instead of I. It also knows that when I say send, I mean send the message and not have it as part of my message. Translation has gotten better too. For example, on WhatsApp, if my best friend Carlos messages me in Spanish, I'll get this prompt asking me if I want to translate from Spanish to English. And let's pretend that he can't speak English very well. I have the option to type my replies in English and send the translation back in Spanish. All of this happens on WhatsApp. It doesn't need the internet, and I also don't need to copy paste anything to a translation app. Currently, this feature works on a couple of apps, including Instagram and Twitter, and I've been using it to chat with friends to pretend that I'm fluent in their respective languages. It's been pretty cool and fun. I just finished my AirPods 3 video. I really like them, and you can click up here to watch that video. This, however, is a Pixel review, so I figured it was more appropriate to use them with my Pixel buds. Unfortunately, I couldn't get them to work. They have this weird bug where they disconnect as soon as you take them out of a case, and I looked it up online. Apparently, it's a thing. So I do not recommend that you buy these. Luckily, the folks at SOUNDCORE sent me these and asked if they could sponsor a video, so it all worked out. These are the SOUNDCORE frames. They're such an innovative device. Where do I start? First, I love their interchangeable system. See, I ordered this particular design tour because I like aviator-style glasses, but I'm not stuck with just these. So here, I just pull and off the frames go. All the tech is tucked away in these temples, so I'm free to pick another frame to match my mood or outfit. Snapping on a new frame is just as easy, and there are 10 different frame styles to choose from. My favorite is Landmark, which comes in black, clear, and tortoise, but it's also available in Harbor, Wander, Cafe, Marina, and Festival. If you need help picking the best styles, no worries. SOUNDCORE has a tool on their website that lets you virtually try them on. Unlike earbuds or over-ear headphones, SOUNDCORE frames are comfy to have on all day. And speaking of, I really do love that I can swap between sunglasses and eyeglasses. I've been using these clear Promenade frames while working on my computer. Apart from being blue light filtering, I like how I can listen to music while I work, but also easily use them for phone calls and even video calls. By the way, you can control music by sliding your fingers along the frame. I have the right side set to control volume and the left to switch between tracks. You can also use your voice. Last but not least, let's talk about sound quality. The SOUNDCORE frames have 4 speakers positioned in front of and behind your ear, and they sound great. The magic, though, is when you turn on Open Surround. It creates a 3D soundstage for surround sound-like audio, all while still being able to hear the world around you. SOUNDCORE frames retail for just under $200. Extra frames are $50 each. If you're looking to pick up a pair, I'll put a link down below. I highly recommend that you check them out. While perhaps polarizing to some, I have nothing but love for the new Pixel design, and I think part of it is knowing how far it's come. Pixels have had plenty of cool designs over the years. I love the really blue OG Pixel. I never owned one because it was always out of stock. And who can forget the Panda Pixel 2 XL? But if you notice, what stood out to me has more to do with color than design. And that's because, thus far, Pixels have looked plain. Thankfully, that's not the case anymore. Love them or hate them, the new Pixel 6 series have a look that's unmistakably Pixel. They're built with premium materials, and yet they still retain their innate playfulness. Between the 6 and 6 Pro, I like the non-Pro's color combinations better. My favorite is this sort of seafoam Pixel 6 with its mix of greens and yellows. The 6 Pro comes in either stormy black, cloudy white, and sort of sunny. And even if orange will probably look better on video, I went with cloudy white, and I have no regrets. Between its slightly curved display and shiny aluminum rails, the 6 Pro especially feels more premium than ever. If you're shopping for one, it's worth pointing out that the renders don't match what the cloudy white phone looks like in person. While the sort of sunny and stormy black 6 Pros are indeed two-toned, the cloudy white one isn't. No issue on my end, but it was sort of misleading. Last but not least, let's talk about that camera bar. After 2 weeks of using the phone, the camera bar has grown on me. It's definitely signature Pixel now, and I don't mind it one bit. In fact, sans a case, when you put your phone down, because it stretches the entire back of the phone, the bar prevents the phone from rocking on a table. And speaking of that bar, let's talk about what's underneath it. Both phones have the same 50 megapixel wide camera with a f1.85 aperture, with a much larger sensor that lets in 2.5 times more light. They also have the same 12 megapixel ultra wide camera with a 114-degree field of view. The 6 Pro has a third camera, a dedicated 4x optical zoom lens. All three cameras are new, which is big news for Pixel users. From the Pixel 3 through 5, Google didn't change camera hardware, not once. They just improved software to make photos look better. So I'm curious, are photos better than previous generations, and how do they compare versus the best Android phones and the new iPhone? Let's start with some Pixel 5 comparisons in case you're looking to upgrade. Outdoors during the day, I wouldn't say improvements are dramatic. I mean, all of these photos look good. Of course, thanks to new camera hardware, photos from the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro have greater depth of field for that creamy bokeh we all love. Notice on the Pixel 6's photo how much more blurred the pan au chocolat in the background. The larger image sensor too means better performance at night when it's dark. Like in this Lego room test shot with all the lights blocked out. When you crop in, you'll find the Pixel 5 captures way less detail. Google's computational photography has always done wonders, but it's great to see their hardware finally caught up. And now for some iPhone comparisons. Get ready, because I have tons of photos to show you. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time nitpicking the differences in daytime photos. But it's worth pointing out that its standard 1x wide lens is wider than most of its competitors. See how much more fits the frame? It's almost like an ultra-wide angle shot. On the flip side, its ultra-wide angle camera isn't as wide, which is a bit of a bummer. Notice on the right-hand side of these photos, I wasn't able to fit in the wings of the Oculus. Now look up at the buildings on the top right and see how much more fit into the frame of the iPhone 13 Pro Max's photo. Now let's talk about HDR for a bit. If you recall, in our iPhone 13 Pro Max versus 12 Pro Max comparison video, I showed you this shot where even in the harshest of backlit conditions, the iPhone's Smart HDR4 magic did the job of outdoor lights or a reflector to really brighten up Chai's face. It's something the iPhone does very well, as can be seen in this more recent backlit photo test. The Pixel 6 did a great job, not as bright, but some would argue its photo looks more natural. Next, a close-up shot. The iPhone 13 series will often boost colors a tiny bit, but that often means it produces the photo most folks will want to post straight to social media. But if you care about color accuracy, it might not be a good thing. For example, these fall leaves weren't as red as the iPhone made them out to be. That said, sometimes when you're photographing something that's actually bright and vibrant, the Pixel gets confused. Apart from the Pixel's photo looking like it was shot on a cloudy day, it also rendered the bright fuchsia mums purple and the bright orange ones a more mute color. So in this sample, the iPhone wins. Same thing here, the Pixel's photo isn't as saturated, but still great. In fact, it might have even done a better job on the rose. By the way, right after I took these photos, a strong gust of wind blew the water from the memorial in my direction. The Pixel 6 Pro was soaked, but thankfully it's IP68 water resistant. Now for some night shots. TLDR, sometimes I prefer the iPhone's photos, sometimes the Pixel. Like in this shot of Chai, the Pixel did a better job at both color balance and lighting her face. The Pixel also produced the brighter photo here, but if you zoom in, it's actually a bit blurry. But perhaps my hand was just extra shaky because of the wind. Because in this photo of a bowling alley, the Pixel's was again brighter, but also sharp. This is outside Brookfield Place. Notice the Pixel captured the details in the trees and the buildings in the background. Also see this string of stray light reflections. It's a problem the iPhone hasn't been able to address, and one that doesn't show up on the Pixel. Finally, a photo of my camera in front of a bright row of lit trees. The iPhone's HDR does a better job, even at night, at lighting the subject even if it isn't human. Finally, some comparisons versus the Galaxy S21 Ultra and the Vivo X70 Pro Plus. This will be quick, just night shots. First, a shot using the ultra wide angle camera. In my opinion, the Pixel's photo is the worst out of the bunch. Its ultra wide angle camera isn't as good, as most of the details are hidden in the shadows. Next, low light shot with human subject. This is Chai sitting outside the Oculus. The Vivo's X70 Pro Plus has the brightest photo, and she says this is the one she'd post. When we zoom in, I prefer the iPhone's photo best. The Pixel's looks a bit muddy from the noise, while the S21 Ultra's is too mushy with all the smoothing. When it comes to capturing detail in the dark, I think the Vivo X70 Pro Plus is the champ. See in this example how much brighter its photo is versus the rest. And yet, the LED billboards are still properly exposed. One thing I did notice, the Pixel 6 struggles at white balance sometimes when colored lights are involved. Look at this shot outside the One World Trade Center. Which photo is not like the rest? It happens in this shot too, but not as drastically obvious. To sum it up, the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro are able to shoot photos that are just as good as its competitors, but it's no longer leaps and bounds ahead like it used to be. So yes, overall, there are improvements thanks to hardware upgrades, and yes, the Pixel's camera is still one of the best out there across all shooting conditions. Very briefly, portrait mode needs a lot of work. It does a bad job at cutouts, and it almost feels like they just cut out a subject and apply a blur to the background. Also, don't use 2x in portrait mode because the results look super pixelated and mushy. The good news is the wide selfie camera we love that got taken away is back. Up front, the selfie cameras on the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro are different. The 6 Pros has more megapixels and a wider field of view. Neither of them have autofocus. Here are some samples. Before we wrap up, I wanted to dedicate a special section to talk about a feature called Real Tone. Google calls it the world's most inclusive camera, and that's based on how historically people of color aren't rendered the way they actually look like in real life. So Google doubled down on its diversity testing and says they've improved the camera tuning models to highlight the nuances of diverse skin tones. This is my buddy Alex, who is mixed Persian and Filipino. The Pixel's renderings of his skin is much more accurate. And here's my super diverse friend group. Notice the phone renders Ya Ling, David, and I with an almost similar skin tone. The Pixel's photo is closer to how we actually look like in person. And now look at Julian, my dapper buddy of Indian descent who works for Wired and whose Pixel 6 review you should check out. In his piece, he says that in the past, he's just shrugged off having photos not look like him because of his dark skin. And after seeing photos of himself shot on a Pixel 6, he got emotional. I'm all for inclusive photography, and I definitely think this feature is a win. I'll put a link to his review down below. The Pixel camera app is well designed. I like that you can adjust brightness and contrast and warmth all while taking the photo. For example, one day I wanted to shoot my pain au chocolat, and the phone couldn't get the white balance right, so I manually went in and adjusted the warmth myself. When it comes to computational photography, Google is in a league of their own. And over the last few years, we've seen some pretty cool innovations like astrophotography. This year on the Pixel 6, Google is introducing even more nifty features, including a fun tool called Magic Eraser. From the Photos app, just click Edit, then Tools, and Magic Eraser. You can either have the phone automatically pick what it thinks needs to be erased, or you can sloppily draw an outline around an object, and the phone will do its best to erase them from a scene. For the most part, it does the job, but often it's easy to spot that something has been edited out. But considering the time it takes versus importing a photo and editing it on Photoshop, it's a pretty cool feature to have nonetheless. It works better when the background isn't as busy or when it's something predictable like leaves on a tree. Another feature called Motion uses AI to achieve what you'd otherwise need a tripod and a lot of time to accomplish. Action Pan lets you create motion trails around a moving subject while blurring out the rest of a scene. We shot a lot of samples, and some of them turned out pretty great. Long exposure mode mimics that creamy effect when photographing, say, a waterfall or a river. To do this during the day, you need something called an ND, or neutral density filter, a tripod so that you can have an exposure that's probably about 30 seconds in length. I wasn't able to go on any hikes near waterfalls, but I was still able to capture these fun photos with a still subject and some movement behind them. Some of these photos are worthy of Instagram, some aren't. But again, considering how much time it took to take these photos, I'm impressed, and a lot of this is thanks to Google's continued improvements to computational photography and the abilities of their new Tensor Chip. The Pixel 6 and 6 Pro have 4,600 and 5,000 milliamp hour batteries respectively, and in my tests, they both lasted me a full day of average use. That said, I'm still a little bit disappointed. Not because the Pixel can't last me an entire day, because it can, it's just that the Pixel 6 Pro doesn't last as long as my iPhone 13 Pro Max, even if the iPhone only has a 4,352 milliamp hour battery. Up until last year's iPhone, Apple has been notorious for putting smaller batteries on their iPhones. That's because they're able to optimize their chips and optimize for battery performance. I guess I was assuming that Google would do the same thing this year, but perhaps it wasn't one of their priorities. I'm not nitpicking here, but with a 5,000 milliamp hour battery and your own custom designed SoC, it's only fair to expect longer battery life. Google promises fast charge speeds of up to 50% in 30 minutes, but you'll need Google's own 30-watt charger, which it doesn't bundle. I wanted to verify this, so I made a trip to the Google store in Chelsea here in New York, because ordering online was just taking too long. And indeed, I was able to get close to Google's claims. In my tests, it was 16% in 10 minutes, 49% in 30, and 80% after an hour. I'm not sure if Google is using some proprietary tech because they say PD 3.0 30 watts, but I tested other 30-watt PD 3.0 chargers from Spigen and Belkin, and I was only able to get to 39% in 30 minutes. So if you want those promised fast charging speeds, you need to pick up this $25 brick from Google. The Pixel 6 and 6 Pro both support wireless charging up to 21 watts on the Pixel 6 and 23 on the 6 Pro, but it requires Google's second-gen Pixel stand, which is still coming soon. If you own a Qi wireless charger, you should get up to 12 watts. So, how can the Pixel 6 be better? The under-display fingerprint sensor isn't as fast as I'd want. It works, and sometimes it just doesn't. And that can be frustrating. Maybe a fingerprint sensor on the power button next time? Or something like the iPhone's Face ID. I also don't find the display bright enough. Outdoors, when it's very sunny, it tends to look dim. And Google really needs to optimize its battery a bit more. So, Pixel 6 or 6 Pro? At $599, it's hard not to recommend the Pixel 6. There's nothing quite like it in the market for its price. Sure, its bezels may not be as edge-hugging as the 6 Pro, and its refresh rate not as fast, but it's perfect, just the way it is. In fact, I think this is the better size. If you're still torn, I think the determining factor is that telephoto camera. Do you need one? Do you want one? If the answer is yes, well, that's your answer. Otherwise, the Pixel 6 is more than right for you. And it's hell of a deal too. Get the 6 Pro only if you want the best phone from Google. There are minor improvements overall. Aesthetically, I prefer the shiny rails versus the matte black ones. And while the haptic engine is the same, they also feel better on the Pro because of where it's located. The 6 Pro also sounds louder. That said, I'm not sure if any of these justify that $300 premium. The Pixel 6 and 6 Pro are very back-ordered online at the moment. As of the time of this filming, December 4th is the earliest ship date for the Pixel 6, and it's January 20th for the Pixel 6 Pro. If you're lucky enough to live in New York, where there's an actual Google store, I believe the phones are still in stock. At least last I checked, my friend Nick was able to walk into the store and walk out with a new Pixel 6. The Pixel 6 starts at $599, while the 6 Pro starts at $899. That's for the 128GB version. It looks like 256GB models are mostly out of stock online, and if you want the 6 Pro with 512GB, you're stuck with only Stormy Black. So, are the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro your gadget match? Google did an amazing job on both the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro, and I couldn't be more happier that these are the phones that Google decided to make. It combines their software greats with excellent hardware. Personally, I believe the Pixel 6 is hands down the best value for money Android phone that you can get in 2021. It's well built and looks great, lasts long, has excellent cameras, is packed with useful and exclusive software features, all at a price that doesn't break the bank. Of the two, it's the phone that gets the GadgetMatch seal of approval. Don't get me wrong, the Pixel 6 Pro is an excellent phone, and I think this is going to be my preferred Android phone of the year. I just can't bring myself to recommend that you spend $300 more when the Pixel 6 offers almost everything that this phone does for so much less. By the way, these new Pixels come with 3 years of OS updates, meaning it's guaranteed to get at least Android 15 and 5 years of security updates. And that was our Pixel 6 and 6 Pro review. Which of these phones do you like better, or are you looking elsewhere for another Android phone? I'm curious. Sound off in the comments section below. As always, if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to this YouTube channel and hit that bell icon so that you get notified as soon as we post new videos. Follow me on social media for all the behind the scenes fun stuff, all my side comments and behind the scenes photos, and as always, for news and updates, make sure GadgetMatch.com is your daily habit. Until the next video, I'm Michael Josh. Thanks for dropping by.